The Kentucky Small Business Development Center is a statewide, nationally accredited program that provides no-cost, confidential business coaching and training services. Whether you're just getting started or are ready to expand, we have the tools, resources, and expertise to help you succeed. We're part of a national network, America's SBDC, with over 1,000 centers across the nation. To learn more about how the Kentucky SBDC can serve you, please visit KentuckySBDC.com or email us at info@KentuckySBDC.com. You can also reach us by calling 888-414-7232. Thank you for joining today's webinar. The chat feature is available for you to ask questions and interact with today's speaker. Please take a moment to introduce yourself and where you are watching from today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Dave Atkin. I'm the director of the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Thanks for joining today. As always, happy to see you guys. And so if you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little toolbar. If you just hover down there, check out the chat feature and click that button. And if you wouldn't mind, just to make sure everything is working, you can hear me and see us very well, just pop in the chat there and say hello. Tell us your name and where you're watching from today. We get folks from all over the country, sometimes the world. So it's always interesting to see who pops up in the chat. So take just a second and say hello. Make sure that everything's working well. I have some great guests today. My team and I, through the pandemic, we've been working so hard, and this problem with burnout has really hit us hard. My team and I, we talk about it a lot, and how to mitigate things and get through our day. So I had the good fortune to meet Shelly and Amanda through other means and learned what they did. And so I thought, in addition to me being able to pick their brains, I thought that you guys who join us would really benefit from knowing Shelly and Amanda as well. So welcome, and I'm really super excited to talk about this subject today. So we got a bunch of people joining today. So looks like there's Kevin from Cincinnati, a bunch of folks from Louisville, Harrisville, West Virginia. Hey, Steve, good to see you again. Yeah, Indiana. Yep, got a bunch of folks coming here. So as we go through today, don't hesitate to jump in there in the chat. If you have a comment or a question for our guests today, please put it in there, and we'll get right to it as soon as we can, or we'll do it at the end, whatever is best. So welcome, Shelly. Welcome, Amanda. If you guys would just jump in, I'm going to step back and let you guys take over from here, because I'm here ready to learn quite a bit.
Sounds good. All right. Well, you want to introduce ourselves, Shelly? Should we do that first?
Go for it.
Okay. So hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Villaveces. I am a marriage and family therapist in private practice. I also am the director of an organization called Mental Health Lou, which is a community mental wellness hub. We do workshops like these. We do our best to bring mental health out of the office, the therapist's office, and out into the community. And that's one thing we're doing here today. And I am joined by my colleague, Shelly. You want to tell us all about what you do?
Sure. I'm Shelly Sowell. I'm also a licensed therapist and a mindful well-being coach. I work with individuals and groups and businesses on a range of topics, all related to skills for mindful well-being.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started today. I'm going to share my screen here. And as we go through, please feel free to ask any questions or drop things in the chat box, and we will answer those as we go along. All right. All right. Can we all see that? Yes.
I see it clearly. I'm trying to see the chat. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, I can see it. Got it?
I got it.
Okay. Great. So today we're going to be talking about how to move from burnout to resilience and how to reconnect to feelings of purpose in this, these very uncertain times. This was a fun kind of title to come up with because I feel like, Shelly and I went back and forth on it. And it was, it's something that, as David mentioned, a lot of people are experiencing right now. A lot of people have been going through some form of burnout or increased stress. And rather than focusing on just solely the burnout and what that looks like, we want to talk about how to move into resilience and how to reconnect with yourself. And purpose is a big piece of what we'll be talking about today. So as we begin, we want to just set intentions. Before we start any kind of webinar, we want people to know why you're here, and we want to know why you're here. So if you could tell us in the chat something about what you would like to learn today, or what you hope to learn today, or maybe just what brings you here. Maybe it's a sense or a feeling of burnout or chronic stress you've experienced in the past few years. Just share with us and we'll give you a second. I know many of us have been feeling fatigue from feeling overworked or working in situations or working from home and you're not used to it. So how to deal with the stress and pressure that comes with running a brand and a business, and resources, definitely. Very big things, how to run a business while also coping and dealing with your own stress. Okay, you all can keep adding those on, but I want you to just take a moment and maybe if you have a little piece of paper or something next to you, go ahead and jot down what some of your intentions might be for today. And notice that intentions might look like goals. They might look like more like educational resources, things that you're looking for. But go ahead and put that down. And then while you do it, I'm going to encourage you to also notice, what feeling are you looking towards? What feeling do you want to get back to? A lot of times when we set intentions around burnout, it's a feeling of returning to a sense of calm or sense of control. So notice that as well. And these are our intentions for you all today. So we want to talk about, we'll define what burnout and resiliency truly mean, especially in our professional realms. We want you to understand what it means to cultivate resiliency, and that you're not going to get everything in this 45 minutes today, but that resiliency is a process that we need to consciously engage in, hence the intention setting we just did. That's the first step in kind of starting to consciously engage in this practice. And then of course, learning how to grow. So learning or recognizing that in order to grow, I love this equation, that your support must equal your challenge. And we'll talk much more about that as we go along. I'm going to toss it over to Shelly and have her kind of lead us into one of our first practices.
Absolutely. So you are in the right place. I saw a lot in the chat about overload and trying to manage people. So some of you, Amanda and I both work with a lot of business leaders. And so we have frequently heard that complexity around trying to take care of yourself when you're in charge of all these people who also have needs, how to lead, how to really show up when the culture you're in has a lot of challenges. And what I want to say is you're here for a reason, and you are certainly not alone. We are just seeing unprecedented levels of stress and anxiety and depression. And part of how I want to frame this for you is that we're in a cultural pandemic that is a trauma. It's a cultural trauma. So no one can escape this. It's something where at some point in the last few years, we have felt threatened in a lot of ways. And if you're consistently watching the news, There are all kinds of things happening that trigger our threat response, our default system that is often coming from a place of fear. And that's good for preparation, but at some point we get exhausted. So if you feel like you're seeing it everywhere, that's why. The other piece I want to frame this conversation around is we were already in our culture living in kind of an unsustainable way. So even when I worked with business leaders prior to pandemic, with the introduction of technological tools in the last 20 years, this possibility that we can work 24/7. And when you own a business, you could work forever. You could constantly engage in things. And so with that added pressure, what I have seen in my 20-year career, I've seen more and more people invest in work, invest in building, and then other things take a hit. Personal time, family time, just anything in the well-being department. So Amanda and I, part of this presentation today is that our work is to help you start to get a feel for how to get back into balance. If you're out of balance, if you're out of alignment, what are some simple steps you can begin to take to regain just a healthier, more sustainable life? Okay. And so my contribution, we're going to take you through 3 practices today. In addition to giving you all this great information, we wanted you to feel and experience really important skills for working with burnout. And at the foundation of all of this is your ability, my ability to get present and grounded. I will name it's a little challenging for me in this moment because I'm used to seeing all the people in Zoom. And right now, Amanda, you're my person. I'm looking at you. So you get to represent everybody. But both of us are kind of looking down at the chat. So if you want to give us a little support, like a thumbs up, like, yeah, this resonates, or here's what I'm interested in, then go for it. Okay, so mindfulness practice. This will take 4 minutes. And if it's not a right fit for you, if it feels uncomfortable for you, just hang out. You don't have to practice. But if you'd like to try, then I'll explain mindfulness after we do the 4 minutes. But find a way to sit in your chair that's comfortable for you. I recommend both feet on the floor. Go ahead and press your feet into the floor so you can feel that body contact. When we press our feet into the floor, we actually begin this process to regulate our nervous system, to tell our body that we're okay. And then find a way to sit in your chair where you're relaxed, but not too rigid and not falling asleep. Feel free to close your eyes or find a spot in front of you just to focus your gaze. The idea is to limit distraction. And then in this place, go inward and just find your breath. Any way you're breathing is fine. We're just noticing our breathing. Then I invite you to adjust your breathing until it feels good and nourishing for your body. So breathing in, you may feel an expansion in the body. Breathing out, you might start to feel just a little bit of release. And we're just going to take a few of these centering breaths. Giving ourselves the opportunity to bring our whole self to this presentation. If you notice any tension in your jaw or shoulders, anywhere in your back, your legs, it's completely normal. You may want to work with it by breathing in and noticing where you're tight. And then breathing out and asking that part to release just a little bit. If your mind is wandering, that is completely normal as well. And you can try the same skill of breathing in, noticing, breathing out, asking the thought to release. And in the final few moments here of settling in with this opening practice, I invite you to call into your mind a moment in your life where you felt full of vitality, where you felt strong or connected, in the zone. Whatever that is for you, just allow yourself to see this moment and see what you notice about it. What you looked like, how you were feeling, what was happening. And if that's challenging for you, for whatever reason, because it is for all of us at times, then maybe just notice this moment you made a choice to show up and do something good for yourself. So maybe be proud of yourself for a moment. When you're ready, begin to open your eyes, bringing your attention back to presentation. And if you have a notebook, you may want to write a couple of things down about that experience for you. And we would love to see it in the chat. Anything that showed up for you in that practice, we love sharing.
Now I have to get myself awake.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, all good. Definitely need it. Right. So, yeah, as Shelly mentioned, I think it's always good to share in the chat what that experience was like for you. I know a lot of times when we have these kind of lunchtime webinars, we might be, texting, doing emails, doing multiple things at the same time. And a mindfulness practice in the middle of all that might feel a little incongruent. But that's the point, right? The point is to encourage you to recognize all that you have going on for yourself at the moment, which are all elements that can lead us to burnout. And then rebalancing, again, going back to that idea of, what's this equation of your support and your challenge? So taking that time out. I'd love to know if anybody actually does anything like that throughout their day, takes a moment for themselves. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about what burnout actually is. And it's probably a buzzword you've heard a lot in the last 2 years, especially. But so burnout is this state of emotional, mental, and sometimes physical exhaustion. And it's brought on by prolonged stress. And a lot of times what it means is that you get to a place where, the demands that you feel like you are coming up against are too big, that you don't have the ability, the mental capacity, the emotional or physical capacity to meet those demands, right? And sometimes this comes from, exposure to prolonged stress. So looking at burnout, there are 5 phases when it comes to like professional burnout. And simply put, there's the honeymoon phase, which is when you get started, you're excited, you might volunteer for things, you might do a lot of things, you might find yourself in a space where you have a good amount of energy. And then of course, what happens is over time, stress naturally comes in because stress is part of our world. It's not like there is a stress-free job, right? I would say even like yoga instructors and meditation instructors are going to have stress within their lives. And so that onset can feel where you notice it, but it still feels manageable. Maybe you can go home and you can rest or you can exercise and you find that stress starts to balance out. As you go into chronic stress, it's where stress becomes more of a day-to-day thing, where you start to notice every day there are these elements of stress, and it might start to feel kind of like a snowballing effect where the stress starts to pile up. And this could be where anxiety increases. This could be where some irritability increases. You might also notice, for some people, burnout can look like them shutting down. And for other people, burnout can trigger maybe hyperfixation on, I have more things I need to accomplish. I cannot stop working. I have to do this. You're bringing work home. There are no boundaries, right? And then when you hit burnout, you'll know it because you'll start to really feel kind of maybe detached. You might feel very overwhelmed. You might experience some of that. I have no choice. I have to keep working. Or you might feel just very defeated, apathy, a lot of the things we mentioned in some of the early slides. And then chronic burnout is where burnout becomes kind of like a lifestyle. It becomes part of your day-to-day, and it feels like something that you can't help yourself get out of, that you've just, and many people kind of have come to accept it. When I work with medical professionals, especially people who work in like ERs or nursing staff, this is something that happens a lot and often is one of the reasons why people leave professions, because they feel like this is just part of their day-to-day and there is no hope. There's no way of escaping it. Although we know that resiliency is possible.
Oh, I will explain this. But first, Amanda, I think I saw a good bit in the chat around signs of burnout. And I know you go through signs of burnout with people all the time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I somehow closed my chat box. So I couldn't see it. So some basic signs and symptoms of burnout, these phases do kind of lead you into some of those signs and symptoms, but what you'll start to notice is apathy, withdrawal, numbness, lack of enjoyment, lack of pleasure. It doesn't have to be specifically focused on your work. It could be it can actually go move into other parts of your life where you just don't feel a lot of energy, you don't feel interested in things. It can also be that that brain, that mindset where you get hyper focused on a problem. You might not even recognize that you're doing it, but that you feel like maybe you have to solve this. I have to solve this. Where the sign for you is if other people outside say, well, you could ask for help on that, or you could have, what about this approach, or what about that approach? And these are ideas that didn't come to you because you have tunnel vision. So that can be a sign. Tunnel vision can be hard to recognize. So sometimes we do need other people outside of our lives to help us. Also, you're going to notice sleep issues, possibly. You might notice your diet changes. You might notice that your routines start to change, where you come home and maybe you used to exercise and now you don't, or you used to hang out with your family and now you just don't have a lot of interest. So really, it's kind of like stress, just amplified. Does that answer the question? I have to figure out how to get my chat box back up.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm wondering if we could see in the chat what people have experienced. If it's something Amanda said that resonates with you, or if there's some symptom in addition. So just go ahead and put something in there. And I'll say, just agreeing with Amanda, where I have people come in and talk about it is usually through their relationships, like something they used to feel connected to, a person or an activity, they just don't feel connected anymore. And I do see a lot of people who go into full achiever mode when adversity is happening, when difficult times are happening. So it doesn't often, that's the thing about burnout. It's hard for people around you to see that it's happening sometimes, but the people closest to you will feel it and maybe name it. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm wondering if, yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know if my chat's working right now. Okay. Well, which is inconvenient, because what I would also love to see is what you think about resilience. Anybody know what resilience is about? And just go ahead and put in the chat if you have a favorite definition or a definition you can't stand. Anything you've heard about resilience.
It's also a buzzword these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we really wanted to bring you in this webinar, is just to understand the definitions of things, because it gets to the point where everybody's saying, oh, I'm burned out. And then you hear resilience so many times, it's hard to understand exactly what that means. And I don't see anything going on in the chat right now, but I'm going to explain a couple of things, but feel free, Amanda's going to look at that, so feel free to jump in. So the thing about resilience is that, yeah, oh, there it is. Ride the waves of ups and downs. Yes. Usually we get this definition of it's your ability to bounce back after something hard has happened. And I want to show you what if you can look at me instead of the really fascinating Lego display my 9-year-old helped me create. This ball, this is a stress ball. I'm hoping you all have some kind of stress ball at some point in your job. Take out that stress. And so if I put pressure on it, if I put it through something and then I release it, it bounces back. It goes back to its original form. So if we're talking about resilience in terms of materials, that's how it's measured, the success of an object going back into its form. The problem is sometimes that's applied to humans and it doesn't work that way. Humans, we are dynamic beings. We are constantly in a state of growth and change. And so the question is, are we tending to that growth and change? Are we participating in it? So I want you to think about resilience as your skill set for building your well-being. And this image is putting money in the bank. So when you practice the skills of resiliency, it's usually before you get to the really bad point so that you're ready for the really bad point. Sure, there are skills we can use to help dig our way out. But I want you to understand that it's a process that we cultivate over a lifespan. So when everything feels good this summer and you're on vacation, you want to go to that yoga class anyway, because you're building your resilience bank for when fall hits and work gets really hard, that kind of thing. Okay, so next slide. Here's a definition for you to just soak in. It's our capacity for adapting. So that's what I mean. We're building a capacity. We're adapting to adversity, to stress, to chronic stress, to even trauma. And we're looking at it automatically and consciously. Give you a second to kind of read through that definition again. So here's what this means. Automatically, we are building resilience in ways, think of childhood. So, and when you see me look down, I've got my notes right here. In childhood, we are doing what we can for our survival. So we might create these habits or patterns of resilience in order to survive the environment we're in. And that doesn't mean we're in a terrible environment. I mean, it could be as simple as we become people who like to achieve and people who are a little bit of a pleaser, because maybe the pleaser achiever child had a parent who praised them a lot when they did good things, or had a parent who was an achiever and super busy and sort of noticed the child and tended to the child when the child behaved in a way that fit what the parent needed. And so that's an example of a child who develops skills for resiliency by adapting to the parent. So that child might become really sweet and kind and nice, or dad's in a bad mood, so the kid starts acting happy and accommodating. And what can happen is, yes, we are resilient and we survive something difficult in childhood, but when we get to adulthood, some of those skills may not serve us anymore. Maybe we don't need to be so accommodating all the time, just for that one example. So the difference is that by the time we reach adulthood, we have our full brain architecture in place. Our brain has come into maturity. So now building our resilience is really about our conscious choice. It's about cultivating our skill set. So we're not just relying on the default system that got created in childhood. And that default system will have beautiful things about it. You could probably think, how you've created your business, how you had the drive to even do that, to be a leader, to be a manager. Probably something, for better or worse, happened to drive you to that. As an adult, we want to step back and look at these drivers to see what is sustainable and what is wearing you out, basically. So adulthood building resilience is that we look at the script, we look at our habits, and we start to make meaningful change for a more balanced life. Let me look at my notes and see. Oh, so the other thing I will tell you is that a couple of things. Your level, your baseline for resiliency is on a continuum. You will have seasons of life where you feel super resilient, where you are able to adapt to whatever challenge is happening. But you will have other seasons of life where you just, so much is going on, you're exhausted and you don't feel like you have money in that bank. You don't feel like you have the internal resources to manage, and you need to start again, rebuilding. The other thing is, when we talk about adult resilience in particular, because you have conscious choice and you can build it, what we're looking for is a successful growth trajectory. So when you practice skills of resilience, are you getting better? Are you feeling better? Are you making more positive choices for your life? So let's see.
There's a
Something-
good quote in the chat.
Yeah,
Can you read it or do you want me to read it to you?
let's see. Is it that I dream?
Yes. Mhm.
I dream of never being called resilient again in my life. I'm exhausted by strength. I want softness. I want ease. Yes, I want to be amongst kin, not patted on the back for how well I take a hit or for how many. Yeah, Amanda, what is your response to that? That's really great.
I think it really speaks to how we as a collective we use these words, like the word resilient, right? And how it can sometimes these terms get taken away from, from what maybe their origin, or how, like in therapy, how we think about resiliency. Because I look at that and I say softness and ease and, being amongst kin, being around people who support you, that's all part of resiliency. Those are part of the tools. So maybe they are tired of, these labels, and I completely understand that. I see mindfulness taken out of context all the time, but to understand that, and then also to think about then, how do we talk about resiliency in our communities without, feeling exhausted by the terminology.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. Yes to all of it. And this is why I wanted to explain childhood versus adulthood. I think that's part of the complexity of where we're getting confused in our culture. It's because my primary population I work with, I call them empathic achievers, or achievers with big hearts and big vision. And so frequently the people I work with, they've been praised their whole life for working hard, for doing the right thing, for being good, for creating something. And the problem with that is the people who are praising us can often miss who we really are. And we can get into this really unsustainable life of expectation where we don't really have a good quality of life. We're missing out on the things that make life meaningful to us beyond achieving. So this next slide, I will give you a minute to soak it in because it's a lot. All right. What you're looking at here is the science. It's resilience, building resilience, working with burnout is a science. And when we work with skills for building this capacity inside of us, here are all the different parts of your brain architecture that are getting activated and strengthened. I'll let you read those. So every function you see here is part of your prefrontal cortex. These are our innate capacities that are natural, and they are built into us for processing our daily experience and making meaning out of it. But when we are super stressed beyond capacity, when we don't have the support working for us, when we've got high challenge and low support or no support, then this is the part of your brain that takes a hit. And you can see that these are really important things. So for everything you see, so body regulation is how you can calm and center yourself rather than moving into a stress state of fear. Fear modulation is what you do with your fear, how you process it, how you perspective take, how you manage it. Emotional well-being, flexible mindset is, this is interesting if you know Carol Dweck's work and her book Mindset, that people with a flexible mindset are just more collaborative and creative and balanced and not taking things so personally, able to adapt quickly to change. The communication piece is also called attunement, and that means we are deeply listening to each other with benefit of the doubt. with everybody has a story, everybody's going through something. So it's kind of the opposite of that fear-based competitive communication. Self-awareness, it's what you're doing here today. You are learning more about yourself. And my screen is covering the others, even though I should have these memorized. Your intuition, that's your gut feeling, your sense of things. It's also can tap into your creativity and your vision. Morality, your ethics, and empathy, your ability to feel the world around you. And some people are good one-on-one with that, and some people can actually feel like an entire cultural moment. So a couple of things to remember here that I haven't named yet. So this develops slowly over time. And in childhood, all of this is unfolding in connection to the people around us, the environment we were in, the culture we were raised in, the people who raised us. All of that had an impact on our particular level of skillfulness in each of these areas. So some you might have a lot of skillfulness, and others maybe you're lacking, and you're looking at it and you're like, I need help with that. The great news is that in adulthood, this conscious choice piece I keep talking about, you can actively strengthen all of these functions in your brain. It's like weightlifting. And it takes about 90 days to make a significant shift. All right, I think do I have one more slide here? Okay, so I know that slide was a little overwhelming. So for us, being healthcare practitioners who help people build this skill set every day, I wanted to give you 3 concrete examples. So if you're working with us and you want to work on body regulation, we're looking at breathing practices to regulate your nervous system. We're looking at, getting you signed up for a good yoga class, or getting your exercise routine to be restorative rather than just something you check a box on. For emotional balance, maybe it's building your emotional vocabulary. Maybe it's identifying some healthy friends to talk to, you can trust. Maybe it's therapy or coaching. And then for morality, that example would be your ethics, your North Star. What is your mission, your vision, your values? And that's why I have a little notepad there. People are so used to identifying those things in their work life and their business. And I like for people to identify that in your personal life. How do you feel about all of those things in relationship to your friends and your family and your well-being? So that's just a sample of how we might work with those things specifically. Okay.
And that leads us into this idea of, purpose. Shelly talked about your North Star. And I know when you're getting into business, when you're choosing a career path, you might feel like you have some direction, or maybe you kind of floated around to see what felt like a good fit. This idea of purpose when it comes to burnout is that it can, I put that it can be the antidote. It's not going to be 100%, obviously, but it's a return to your foundation. It's a return to things that are meaningful to you. And it's something that you can do that can help you connect with yourself, and then help you make good choices. As as Shelly is talking about this idea of this is a practice, we're building on things, but we have to consciously choose what to do next. And this idea of purpose can be something that actually redirects us back to making those conscious choices and helping us step away from that overwhelming stress that comes along with burnout. So our second practice, and this will just be a short practice, but it's something that I want to just use to help you all get started, is there are many ways of reconnecting with purpose. And one of the ways that I really like, following along with what Shelly's talking about, is this idea of like how we develop these skills in childhood and who we are in childhood. is to allow yourself to just let your mind for a moment wander back to childhood. And I know we've all had different types of childhoods, but to think back to maybe a moment that you might have treasured in childhood. And think about what about those moments felt meaningful to you? Or if you were allowed to daydream in childhood, what fascinated you in your daydreams? What brought you, were you attracted to in those daydreams? What brought you joy in your day-to-day? And then you might deepen into that memory by just allowing yourself to fill your senses with it. So noticing in that daydream or in that treasured moment, what did it feel like for you? What did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell? What were the colors surrounding you in that space? I know for me, as a kid, I spent a lot of time in a tree in front of my house. And when I reflect on it, I feel the sense of independence and freedom I had as I, escaped my two older brothers and climbed into a tree to just hang out for the day and explore nature. So noticing what feelings did this daydream, taking yourself back to childhood elicit? What does it bring up for you? And just like that idea of intention in the beginning, where intention can be a goal that we're setting, but it's also about a feeling that we want to feel. And that's what purpose is as well, is redirecting us towards these feelings. And these feelings can create this, like I said, this foundation for choice. So mindfulness can be the thing that helps bring you awareness of what you're experiencing. And the sense of purpose can help guide you or direct you as you're making these conscious decisions into what do you want to do next? What's the next best thing for you, right? And so just take another moment to kind of notice that childhood moment. Notice maybe some things that were important to you then. Maybe notice if those experiences led you to where you are now. And if they did, what role did they play? And this is just a moment in your day, in your middle of your work day, to just kind of daydream off and reconnect with that. And there are many, many other exercises you can do to reconnect with a sense of purpose. But I really like this one because it's ideally taking us back to the time where maybe we had more freedom or we didn't have some of the constraints that we might feel in adulthood, Like I said, I understand everybody had different childhoods, but ideally everybody had a moment that they treasure. If you want to share anything in the chat, please do. But as far as time goes, I'm going to keep moving forward. So we have one other final practice that we'll actually just jump into, which is just a reflection and talking about growth. And so I'll share a quick little story with you about someone who you may or may not know who's quite successful. Ariana Huffington, who runs the Huffington Post. And in her first few years of starting the Huffington Post, she was working so much. And you can see this quote where she had this idea, this delusion of what it meant to be successful, that she actually at one point collapsed on her desk and broke her cheekbone. And that was her aha moment. Ideally, none of you have to have that aha moment to recognize the degree to which she was burnt out. And this is a great example of tunnel vision, that she felt like she had to keep moving forward. And this is where, for her, she started to integrate some of the practices that we're talking about to help her find a better balance in life. And she actually now talks about these moments at conferences and on a regular basis. And then.
So I'll give my snapshot, and we're giving you this is like story time, right? We're giving you these quick snapshots just so you can have a concrete example of how this might, once you've identified, yeah, I'm burned out and I need help, like how it might be worked with, or it might be your aha moment. So I just call this human dreading driveway dad. This is a man in his 30s, and he founded a business with his friends, and it just took off, and it was way more successful than they imagined it to be. They thought it would just be a small side thing, and then it just took over all of their lives. So they were working with the demand to keep up, and then 10 years pass, and he started realizing that he was getting in more fights with his wife. He didn't really know his children. There was this moment where one of his kids had an assignment in school, like draw your family and write about your family. And his child drew him and said, like, all he does is work. And it was just this really sad moment for him to do a life review and realize, yeah, I'm really stressed out and I never stop. And there's always more to be created. So some of the things we worked on, and by the way, he also started having, it wasn't just the arguing, it was the anxiety he was feeling in his body every day. And the reason I call it this is because it wasn't just this person. I've had many people tell me that when they're burned out, one way they figured it out is they would pull onto their street and approach their driveway, and they just dreaded going home. Which is interesting, because home should be this refuge. It should be this place where we regroup and we recover from our day. But part of burnout, when you are a leader, you run your own business, is that you realize at some level that you're disconnected from your home life. And so people can tend to dread approaching it because they can start to feel like a failure. And for a person who's been an achiever their whole life, to even come close to feeling like you might be failing something is a big emotion to process and balance out. So I worked with this person on identifying and accepting that he's human and that he needed more balance in his life, and that building the business wasn't everything. He needed more employees. He needed to delegate, compassionate communication with his partner and his children, setting boundaries at work. So really being a leader in the culture to model, we can't work 24/7. We've got to stop emailing at 9 o'clock at night. We need an end point where we stop for the day so we can disconnect and privilege our well-being and our mental health. And the other thing is, this person did a lot of self-growth work. So a lot of examining family patterns to understand, how did he get here in the first place, becoming a workaholic? You know, what happened in his family of origin that set this expectation so that he could change it? And I love this one. Part of our plan is that he scheduled more hangout time with his friends and his family, and he scheduled vacations with his kids. So, he just made sure that he was building it in and prioritizing that good, healthy connection in his life. Yeah. Okay. So we'd love to see, this is our part where we're getting into Q&A, and we'd like to see what's resonating with you. Anything from that practice, anything from the two stories that you're connecting with, just please put it in the chat, like a word or a phrase that really stands out.
Or even just letting us know where you commonly get stuck.
Yeah.
What that's like for you.
Absolutely.
Healthy boundaries, that is a good one. How to transition from work to home. And then how do you let go when management does nothing? Yes, so those frustrations that you can experience as well at work. So I'll speak to somewhat to healthy boundaries. I think, so you can be very intentional about your boundaries. You can practice the communication of letting, your coworkers know what you're, setting your, I do not check email past this time. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but ideally it does. being able to leave work at work and being intentional about that. And I know this all sounds maybe pretty obvious and cliche, but as you know, Shelly is describing, sometimes we even within on our calendars, it's important for us to put time, like little, X time out, as far as this time is for me, this time is for my family. And I think part of the healthy boundaries also comes with that awareness of when something from work does pop up. Can you take 60 seconds and breathe and slow your body down and regulate those emotions that flare up when you're seeing something from work that maybe is happening while you're at home, to then go back to that idea of mindfulness and purpose and best choice for you? Because I think a lot of times we have these boundaries get blurred because we have this belief that we have to do this, that, and the other to keep things moving. And that's not always true. So you might be able to either reply with, I will look at that tomorrow morning, or you can choose to look at it later. But it's setting those, I call them buffers, taking those 60 seconds to take a deep breath and let your body regulate so that you can have a little bit of, get your frontal cortex back online, help you make healthy decisions about boundaries when it comes to when work is easily popping into your life. Shelly, do you want to talk about the frustration of management?
Yes. And you are not alone. It's interesting. I've been in corporate programs with multiple levels of management in the room, and I've often had people from higher levels up look to everybody else and say, just stop emailing. And then the other people are saying, wait a minute, you're going to punish me, or you're the one who set the guidelines. And so, yes, it's true that companies are only as healthy as their leadership. That's why if you are a leader listening, it's really important that your own self-care is a priority. If you are in a situation where you can't control that, part of the work is getting really clear on your own boundaries, your own needs and wants, even if you think you can't have them, so that you can start to craft a way of advocating for yourself. So another practice we do a lot in this area is looking at what's in my control and what's out of my control. Because sometimes people can start to feel better by working on what they can actually control. And then what's out of your control, that advocacy piece, learning how to speak to your needs, can be a really critical step. But also it's a process. It's a process to get there. I'm also looking at the good books, and Amanda, I'm interested what you have to say on that. I'll mention, while you think about that, I will mention Mindsight by Dan Siegel. That's where the interpersonal neurobiology that I gave you today came from Dr. Dan Siegel. I know a lot of people who love Atomic Habits, and Brené Brown's Dare to Lead has a ton in there on being resilient at work and setting boundaries. Do you have any that you love, Amanda?
I always lean towards the self-compassion work, because I think that's a huge piece of letting some of these expectations we put on ourselves go and being more realistic. So I usually go towards Kristen Neff's work, and whether it's just her website, because her website is great as well. So we could probably put some of that in the chat. I can write her name. She has a new book called Fierce Self-Compassion that I really like.
I love that one too. And I'm going to put a place that Amanda and I both love. You can look up the Greater Good Science Center. It's at Berkeley in California. If you don't have time to read all of these books, you can just go to their website and put your question in the search. And they usually have a lot of really good articles and resources that are 5 to 10 minute reads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've gone way up to the time here. So
questions.
Just, I'll put this up. And then if there are any other questions, And we want to let you all know as well that Shelly and I both are working on programs for leaders and for professionals, and we'll be hosting those in the fall. So if you'd like to get on our list so that we can let you know more about those, please feel free to email us. You can email me and I'll field all that.
Yeah.
Or if you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, I thank you guys for that. That's been spectacular information. So here's your last chance. Go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat there, and we'll take one last moment or two to talk to Amanda and Shelly. And I do have a couple of questions since I get to talk now. I have a team. I manage several teams at once. I have quite a few people that I have to look after, and this has been on my mind for a while. And I'm losing some staff, some key people that mean a lot to me. I'm saying goodbye to one today. So excuse me. What would you tell a leader? What would be the first couple of steps that you would do to kind of mitigate some of these problems with your teams?
See, I'm going to let Shelly take that one first. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I David, I so appreciate your question because it really speaks to the humanity of business. It's so easy for people to reduce the work of business to something cold and transactional when it's anything but. For anybody on this webinar today, a good leader has a profound emotional connection to the company, to the team, to all the teams you manage. And so when you're feeling something that is across your team, where they're struggling with burnout, I think number one, just being very honest and having good conversations about it. Even if you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, when I go into companies and find out, what really makes people upset, the number one thing I hear is that they do not feel seen, heard, or valued. So basically, if leaders can just take the time to be very present with the people they have stewardship over and listen to their stories, even if they can't fix it, that can go a long way. Somebody just feeling like they matter. And David, knowing you, I'm sure you do that already. So the next step would be having some intentional programming or resources around just normalizing it's okay to get help, and that a lot of people are needing help right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think building off of what Shelly had said earlier, which is be aware of your own, how do you take care of yourself throughout the workday? Because that is going to show with other people. And I don't know if all of your staff is still remote. I know some people really feel disconnected when we're remote. And so taking time, setting intention to connect with people and be able to demonstrate, like your own healthy work boundaries or your own 60-second timeouts or things like that. I encourage all my professional clients to use something like there's called Pomodoro app, and it's just a timer. It kind of helps compartmentalize our day a little bit, but it also reminds us, you've done this task for 25 minutes, stand up and stretch and go take a walk or get some water or take care of yourself. Things that we easily forget when we're busy working, right? Especially if we're working from home and we're not in the office where we can't swivel around and say, what are you doing for lunch? So.
Something else. So someone else who's very dear to me journals a lot, and she finds that very helpful. And I've tried that and I totally fail at it. Is that something that you can recommend, or somebody like me that I just can't get a hold of it? I mean, what else would you recommend?
I assign journaling to everybody I work with, but the kind of journaling I assign is called Take Out the Trash. And if you email us, I can send it to you. Okay. But it's a 5-minute practice where it's ugly. You're not saving this for anybody. It's a brain dump that is emotional and uncensored so you can see what's really going on inside. And from a brain dump for 5 minutes, maybe we can extract one thing that you need to do to move yourself forward. I want to speak to a little bit of what's in the chat about resources. We are full of resources, and so many, in fact, that we couldn't possibly give you a condensed list here. We've named some things, but here's the other thing. I find that most people have a few things they know they could do to enhance their well-being. It's a question of, do we make the time? Do we have the space to do them? And you're right, David, it has to be custom created to fit your lifestyle, to fit the time frame that you have. So journaling may not be for you, but maybe some mindful movement or some breathing practices. We would have to get to know you to make a custom kind of plan. But start with what you guys already know. Think about the things that have helped you in the past. You have the 9 functions of resilience. So you can look at those categories and see, where do I need additional help? And then you could probably find a book or a tool or contact somebody to help with that.
And I know a lot of people do struggle with the idea of journaling because sometimes it's just too vague, it's too big. So either journaling prompts can be really helpful there, or for people who aren't, who don't love journaling, I love the idea and I'm not necessarily great at it either, is again, building off of what Shelly was describing. I think we all have these skills. You do something for yourself that's good every day already. Sometimes it's a matter of just being aware that you're doing it or doing it intentionally. So I'll tell people, do one good thing for yourself each day. Set intention to do one good thing, and that will start to snowball. And it might be things that you do naturally, like go get a glass of water, but you're doing it by choosing to do it. You're not just go get a glass of water, but it's like, I'm thirsty, I care about myself, I matter, I'm gonna get a glass of water. Oh, and I'm gonna put ice in it because that sounds really good, So it's like just these little things, and it's awareness of that to kind of show yourself that you do matter. And it's a mindful practice because you're becoming aware of your needs. And if journaling's not your thing, you can, you don't have to start there. You can always start, as Shelly said, start with what you already do and just continue to build off of that.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly going to reach out for some resources. You guys are both amazing individuals. If everyone out there, if you guys would just take the time to reach out to Amanda and Shelly, I mean, they are great people to know. And we've gone a little bit over our time, but I can't thank you guys enough for sharing. I mean, I've gotten a bunch of text and a couple of emails already saying that this has been a really fantastic use of their time. So reach out to these two folks. They're here to help, and I'm certainly going to do it as well. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hopefully we'll do it again because I've got a lot to learn and a lot to do.
Yes. Yeah, we'd love to do another post summer and see how everybody's doing.
That sounds like a good plan.
Check in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
All
thank
right,
you
well,
guys. Thanks everybody for joining us. And
Bye.
see you next time.
Thank you.
At the Kentucky SBDC, we know small businesses are the heart of our economy. That's why our goal is to help business owners start, grow, and succeed in Kentucky. Find out more about how our no-cost business coaching, training, and resources can help your business. Visit us at KentuckySBDC.com.
Well, thanks again.